Good morning, friends and followers. Thank you for joining me this morning as one more episode of H3 TV where we talk about navigating disruption with hope, health, and happiness. That's what H3 stands for: hope, health, and happiness in the midst of disruption, interruption, and real life. Today, I think about the stress of the holidays and I think about trying to do it all and trying to be okay doing it all, and how that can give us anxiety, which can also give us acid reflux, which will also wear us out. And I want you to have some tools in your tool chest, as I need many tools in mine to stay hopeful, healthy, and happy always. But even in the holiday season with joy, there can be challenges. So thank you for being with us. I want to invite you that if you are listening along and you have a question or a comment or a thought or an encouraging word, we are happy to hear that. So thanks for being with us. Remember, you are always welcome to ask questions, and myself or my guest, who is Connie today, will definitely get back to you and answer. So please welcome Connie to the stage. Hey, Connie, thanks for being with me.
Hey, Annie, thanks so much for having me here.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Where do you live? What do you do?
Okay, my name is Connie Monroe, and I'm from New Jersey, lived in New Jersey most of my life. Since 2017, I've been living in Costa Rica. It's a big, long story how I got here, been coming here for many years, but for many reasons, my partner and I decided that in 2017, we were going to just stay here because we kept coming back here. In 2021, I became a published author, and currently I am a life design coach. And I also do some teaching English online because I fell into that work when we started coming here, and I realized I needed to be very much, online. Prior to that, I had an 18-year career in corporate America in finance, and clearly I couldn't do that work from Costa Rica. So I got into the teaching English online, and then, followed my interests, followed my heart, my passions. And so here we are.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, I like to talk about disruption. My most recent books, inspired by the hurricane, which was a massive disruption, but we all face interruptions, disruptions, storm, or changes. But just in general, when you think of that word, what comes to mind for you?
It's interesting that you say that, Annie, because as a kid, up until the age of about 10, I was constantly having disruptions in my life. And it's mainly because of my father. My father was very dysfunctional. He was an alcoholic, and he was constantly leaving. It'd be like he never really brought that stuff into the house, but he would go and binge, right? So he'd be gone for days, and then we'd be like, oh, now he's back, right? And this is before internet, this is before cell phones. So literally every time that happened, I know my mom was like calling hospitals and stuff. Well, something happened when I was around the age of 7. He decided to clean his act up. I wrote about this in my book, but for about 3 years, he was like a normal dad, and he was really a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type. So when he was sober, he was amazing, and when he was drunk, he was a nightmare. And so for 3 years, we had this normal situation, and then one day, out of the blue, boom, he just went off the wagon, and that was it. And after about, I don't know, 6 weeks, we're like, oh, maybe he's really gone this time, right? So major disruption. I had grown up with that. And, a lot of people were worried about me when I was younger, when he finally left and abandoned the family. I have 3 older sisters, 8, 9, and 10 years older than I am. I'm sure they experienced that a lot differently than I did. But I think part of the reason why, as a kid, I wasn't so, everybody kept checking in on me. Are you okay? Whatever. I never really had that dad, except for the last 3 years, right? So he was around. He was this great guy. He was very active in the community. He was very loving and helpful. But then he was gone. And honestly, as a kid, I remember thinking, you know what? Maybe it's good that he's gone, right? Maybe it's good that he's gone. He called one afternoon when he knew I was like one of those latchkey kids. He knew I'd be home from school for about an hour. And so there it is, right? Now I didn't put 2 and 2 together till years later, but I'm like, oh, that's why he called. So he's like, so what do you think about Dad coming home? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I was like 10 years old, right? Like, I don't know. And so for years, I'm like, I'm the one who made him not come back, right?
Mm.
So for many years after that, I felt like I was the problem, but clearly I wasn't. I think that was a normal thing for a 10-year-old to think. But fortunately for me, I had a lot of loving people around me, help me get through that time. Um, and oddly enough, I think that that major thing that happening in my youth
Yeah.
really did help me get through other disruptions. So, for example, when I got married to my ex-husband, there were fertility issues, that led to like marital issues and, you know, just this whole, realization eventually, right? It took a while to get there, but this whole realization that guess what? This is life, right?
This is
Life is not about
life.
everything for me up until my marriage, or actually probably up
Let's
until my divorce, was like a
let's try to pick
destination. Go ahead.
one. Let's try to pick, Connie, one disruption and just try to focus on that. So whether it's
Okay.
your childhood with your dad or your divorce or infertility or what, I want you to kind of think about one specific time that we can kind of relate to, because we all do. Life is not only disruptions; it's many wonderful things, but it also has interruptions and disruptions, right? And so, what is one time that you really felt like, and sometimes, Connie, even you moving to Costa Rica, we talk about disruptions can be things we choose. They can be good and still have challenges, right? So we can choose disruption. We can
Absolutely.
have it thrown on us. So what's one time in your life that you kind of want to focus on, that you feel like you could teach the audience some skills and tools? What's something that happened specific disruption for you?
Sure, sure. So I'll give you one of the most recent ones, right? So this was when we decided to come here in 2017.
Yeah.
You know, my mind was sort of like going in the direction of where I am now, right?
Okay.
And one of the things that, I mean, what kind of a life design coach would I be if I didn't help my own partner open a restaurant? So we had a restaurant from 2017 to 2021 here in Costa Rica, right?
Okay.
And I was struggling, and I was really struggling. And, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, I wanted to do the other thing. And again, right, I was excited for the restaurant. I mean, it was so much fun. So, like you say, right,
Right.
disruptions aren't always thrown upon us, right? We walk into them with an
Yeah.
open mind and everything. But,
Yeah.
at some point in the opening of that restaurant, I was struggling because I was felt very distracted. I wanted to do other things. And, my partner, he was like, you know what? I understand you want to do other things, but we've committed to this together. Like, you just got to do what you've got to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, he's so right. Right? He's so like, what am I? I'm walking around. I had like a bit of an attitude, right? I'm like, I wasn't much fun for about at least 6 months. I was not much fun. It was like every 5 minutes, I felt like just, angry. Like, why did I get myself into this? How could I have done this? I spent 18 years in corporate America. Why did I do this? But his words resonated with me. And I'll tell you what, in 2018 is when I wrote my book, Annie. So the big lesson here really is no one's coming to save you. No one's coming. Yes, people are going to help you. You're going to find amazing help along the way. But ultimately, you are the one who's responsible for your happiness. You are the one who's responsible for working on your dreams. It's you. It's the work you put into it. And while these moments in our lives are not easy, we can choose how to do that. We can choose, oh, am I going to be angry about this situation or happy? We can really choose. And, I was falling into an old trap of, look at this situation, right? Anybody would agree with me that this is ridiculous. And I like get on the phone and kibitz with my girlfriends. And, I had to tell you, we really can choose a lot more than we think we can. So
That's
we're
right.
not our circumstances, right? We just have to roll with our circumstances. And I think that's a huge lesson. I also think it's something we have to constantly work on.
Yeah.
It's not like I had this major revelation and 2 days later the book was written. Not only did it take me a year to write the book, but it was also a year of reminding myself,
Yeah.
okay, you've got this responsibility at the restaurant. That's fine. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So yeah, I think that the big lesson is to get yourself in check. realize that you've got more control than you think you do. And really it is about your perception. You are not your circumstances.
Yeah. And what was happening, it sounds like, is you were starting to feel very resentful toward your partner in having this restaurant that you agreed to. And now you're like, wait a minute, this is a lot of work. I didn't want to be, when my husband and I have talked about owning restaurants, my sister-in-law has owned restaurants, and talking about, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. Oh my gosh, this is really hard. How am I going to do this? And what happens with resentment is we're holding it right in our body, which makes us physically exhausted. But then I think I used a word, we kibitz with my girlfriends, which then basically means complain, which feeds that fuel of resentment.
Absolutely.
And you're like, wait a minute, you're giving all your power away. Like, this is happening to me. And it's like, wait a minute, I chose to leave the financial world to move to Costa Rica, to start a restaurant with my partner. And if I don't love 100%. It, how do I start my exit strategy plan? And which parts do I want to be involved with and not involved with? And I think restaurant ownership is a wonderful thing. And we need restaurants in the world. And it is so much work and so many moving parts that people don't think about. My husband and I often talk about, we used to own gyms, and we'd say, just because you like pizza doesn't mean you should own a pizzeria, right? Like, just because I own a gym doesn't mean that I'm the best personal trainer in the world. And so we got to know what we're gifted at and what we're not, and like you discovering your gifts and understanding that. So when you felt that kind of resentment and like overwhelmed, and as you said, always when something's going on in our relationship together or outside of our relationship, it can separate our relationship and can build resentment and negativity and disconnection and isolation. And there's just layers, right, to all this.
Oh, absolutely.
So when you're feeling this disruption about, holy cow, we just opened this restaurant, I agreed to it, but now I'm not sure that was a good choice, or that I'm not happy about it. How did you stay hopeful about your future in the midst of the hardship of all the dynamics of owning a restaurant?
Okay, so yeah, of course. No. So I really took his words to heart, and it was really funny because, coaching is my thing. It's not his thing. He's amazing. He has an amazing mindset. He's great. But I was like, wow, who's coaching who here? So I really took that to heart. And here's the thing, right? So the first chapter of my book is called Be True to Yourself, right? And I'm like, that is the biggest key, right? Am I being honest with myself? Right? Like, there's so many times in a given day where we can not be honest with ourselves. And the more we're not honest with ourselves, we go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And then you get further, like, you look in the mirror and you're like, who are you? Like, oh my God, that happened to me. I think the reason why I was getting so panicky is because that happened to me in corporate America, right? I did not want to be there. Like, I just, I had student loans to pay, and I'm like, oh, it's the easy way to do it. I'm just going to do it, right? So I think with the experience back in 2017, I was panicking because I'm like, you're doing it again. You're doing it again. But I had to really take stock. And the minute that I realized, oh, I can do other things, right? Yes. I mean, the restaurant business is no joke. I mean, I knew it wouldn't be, but I was like, whoa, this is like amazing. So I said, all right, I'm just going to take these pockets of time where I can and not waste them, right? One of the biggest lessons I learned from my divorce was life is short. What are you going to do with your life? Yeah. So now I've got these pockets of time where I can write the book. I literally wrote the book on the hills of Costa Rica because I would go for these hikes and I get these ideas and everything else. And so honestly, it really was taking stock, number one. Being honest with myself is the most important thing. The more I got honest with myself, when I started writing the book, when I started taking steps toward the life I have now, it was like looking in the mirror. I was like, oh, now I know who you are, right? Yeah. I think when we're not honest with ourselves, we're so far apart. And what good are we to other people then, right? So, then I started here's the funny thing, right? I started taking steps toward my own life. And there's so many similarities with what my mom went through with my dad. It's like crazy. It was because it's kind of like the way that what happened to my mom. When she started taking steps toward herself, things started getting better. So I was no longer a lunatic. I was no longer resentful. I'm taking the steps over here. I'm helping my partner. I've started, the miraculous thing is I started enjoying the restaurant. I'm like, I love it. I love it here. Sometimes we're planted, right? So you have to bloom where you're planted.
Yeah.
I started speaking to some of our regular customers about the work I was doing. They were engaging with me, right? It
Mm,
was like this whole thing, like you don't have to have these separate lives,
mm,
right? We've got things in our life that we have to do, that
yeah.
we agree to do. Just remain true to yourself. The way that I made all of that work is I said, all right, well, let's continue in this vein, but I have to be true to myself. Don't do what you did in corporate America and stay there for 18 years and being completely dishonest with what you wanted and all the rest of it.
Simple. I mean,
So
that's where
really important.
comes up. Yeah, I think you have to know yourself. You have to learn to. You have to know who you are. Then you have to be honest with where you are. Like, what do I love about the restaurant? What do I not? Right. So you first get to know who am I. Then be honest with yourself. Like, what am I resentful about? And I like my partner, so why am I going to ruin that over this? And what part?
Absolutely.
And then I think often when I think about DEI, I think it all starts with like yourself. But you have to know yourself. You have to know first who you are. Then you have to be honest with what do you like and not like about yourself and about your life. And then you have to learn to like yourself. And once you know that, what parts are on you that we like to blame other people for, and what do we like about ourselves, and then how can we let that shine and lose the comparison, lose the resentment, which gives us freedom so we can live fully, because life is short, right? Like all of that comes back to that. How did you stay healthy? And I love that you said, I think it's so important, Connie, when I work with people writing books or when I'm writing myself, is like, get to that place of being grounded enough and calm enough and clear enough that you can write. So I love that you said you went hiking in the, like, just, I've never been to Costa Rica, but I hear it's beautiful. The visual of hiking into the mountains in Costa Rica and finding a place to release, getting to a place where you could be calm and grounded, and then you could write and teach your own story, but teach others through your story. So how did you, in addition to hiking and having a release of writing, how did you stay healthy during those hard times that felt resentful, whether that was in your relationship healthy? How did you get back together in communication and kindness to each other?
Yeah. Well, again, right? If we're on an airplane, right? And you know how everybody gets a spiel, if something happens, these things come down, right? You put your mask on first before you help anybody else.
Right.
Right. So that was a big thing. I was coming away from, how do I start my day? Right. That was a big thing. And since those days, I've actually expanded on it. I now do meditation and all this other stuff. But in those days, that was a big thing. So if the schedule allowed, and even if the schedule didn't allow, I would find a way to do it where I would take 30 minutes. It probably didn't even start out as 30 minutes, but what it was like, I need to do something to get my mindset set, right? And a lot of times that was simply the hike. I had this friend of mine introduce me to this gym, right? So once a week I would go faithfully. Once a week, it was this great, I'm happy to say his business is survived COVID. He's now got a second gym. He's this amazing young guy, right? And I've tried different instructors and stuff. He just was the best. So once a week, literally once a week, whether early in the morning or at the end of the day, I would go. And that I found this whole other community of people there, right? You think, well, what's 1 hour a week going to do for you? I have to tell you what, some of those people I still talk with, I'm still friends with. And I think that little bit of different exercise helped me physically in different ways,
Yeah.
And then the other thing to stay healthy, really, like for me, exercise and being active is so much more than the physical. It's what got me through my divorce, honestly. I used to run like a lunatic, when I was going through the divorce with my ex-husband and we'd be in an argument, I'd be like this, you know what, just, I need 10 minutes. I would put my sneakers on and go. And I know he thought I was crazy, but I didn't care. So, this physical element is really mostly mental as well. And then the other thing was just to put myself in check. Once you start your day a certain way, right? And especially for me, right? Like we live in a village that's a farming village. At the moment we happen to be in the city right now. We're spending here the holidays here. But where we live is like you are in no man's land, right? They are farmers around us, right? I'm not one to really take my phone and listen to music. I used to run to music and stuff, but I mean, you've got birds, like, why do I want to pollute that, right?
Yes.
That 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is. And if it's really beneficial to do it in the morning because your brain is done, right? You just woke up. You've not
Yes.
polluted it with emails or news or anything. Boom. That is like the biggest thing I can tell people to do, right?
Yeah.
And lots of people will be like, oh my gosh, I have this big job. I've got all these responsibilities. I get it. I get it. But every person that I've ever met who is successful or seems to be really well grounded to me,
Mm-hmm.
that's how they start their day. And
That's
because you
right.
know what? Now their mind is clear. Now all the other things can sort of fall into place. So as far
Yeah.
as, my relationship with my partner, boom, I've already got myself in check. I'm not
Yeah.
like, oh, why are we going to the restaurant? Oh, it's like, boom, your mind is clear. Is it perfect? Does this mean you have no problems anymore? Absolutely not. But I
Yeah.
can say that hands down, it's one of the biggest things that has helped me in my life become a better person, become more effective in helping others. Boom,
Yeah.
to get yourself, the very first thing you do in the morning is set your day straight rather
Yeah.
than jump into it.
I call it movement is my medicine. I don't do it always because I want to, but I do it because I need to. So I always start my day. I have a dog that bosses me around too, but even without the dog, walking, like just going. And I also love that you said, because I think it's a rarity, you don't plug it in headphones. So especially when I'm at the beach, but I don't wear headphones anywhere anymore. I used to listen to music and listen to things, but actually the calm is better for me. And when I'm at the ocean and I go by lots of people with headphones on and I'm thinking, I'm looking to the left and the waves are crashing and the dolphins are leaving and the birds are singing. I want to hear that. I don't want excess noise. And even here where I'm kind of at my safe house right now, it's calm out. When I walk in the morning, it's very quiet. There's a few birds, but it's just like being grounded. Grounded is my word for 2024. And I'm like, I want to get back to grounded. And grounded is about self-care, slowing down. I tend to run about 200 miles an hour in my mind, let alone in my activity life. I'm not a runner, but moving. What else can I do? And finishing one book and thinking, okay, I got to start my next book and doing this and it's exhausting. And I'm feeling a bit exhausted at the moment. And so I'm like, okay, get back to that grounded. Start your day slow. Don't jump because I bounce out of bed with 300 ideas. So I have to like now go for a walk, unplug, and just listen to the breeze, listen to the birds. So I love that you do that. I really think movement's medicine. It's not just our body, it's our mind, it's our emotions, it's the calming, it's the breathing, letting ourselves breathe. And in January, I'm starting a group coaching and it is called Stuck to Soaring because I know that when you feel stuck, you can spin in the stuckness. And so I know
Absolutely.
so many women that are stuck in their career, in their relationships, in their finances, in their mindset. And I'm like, in order to get out of that, you have to slow to get out of stuck. And so you can soar. You have to get to slow. You have to get to calm. You have to get to nature, get to movement, get to slow movement. And sometimes even runners maybe stop running or take a break or add a walk is very different than a run. It's a very slowing the heartbeat, slowing the racing, slowing the going. And I'm just so excited to help people. And I always think we teach what we need to learn too. Like I have been teaching for a lot of years, but I'm always like, yes, Annie, but you need this reminder too. You need to slow down. You need to calm down. And I love that when you take care of yourself, when you're doing these things to start your day, it's totally blessing your relationship with your partner. It's totally like, oh, I like you and I'm happy. You're amazing. And I want to sell it. Why am I being crabby? And even if that's mainly his dream, you can support it and also still have your own dream. I love that you teach English. I love that you have this diversified ways that you can give back. But we must first, to do it well, take care of ourselves, have that calm, have
Absolutely.
that self-care. So I love that. And I also love, as a gym owner for 12 years with 2 franchise gyms, I know that there's many things we can do to lose weight, but I also know that movement and laughter are the greatest medicine. So how do you stay happy and find humor in the midst of the hard day? Where do you find your laughter? Where do you find your happiness? Because people need tips on that when life does get overwhelming.
Yeah. Well, so I'm a really lucky girl because, you know, my partner and I are together for almost 20 years now. And, he is funny as heck. I got to tell you. The only reason I'm like, if this guy asks, because we exchange numbers, whatever, the typical meeting. Oh, how are blah blah blah. I'm like, if he asks me out on a date again, I'm definitely going because he's funny. And that's the thing, right? Like I grew up in a family. Most of my family was born in Jersey City, New Jersey. Jersey City people, if you don't know them, they've got like a wicked sense of humor. It can be dark at times, but they find the humor in like bad moments. And I don't know if it was growing up around that shaped part of my personality, because here's what happens to me, Annie. And maybe it's not appropriate, but if I'm at the height of a stress moment, I can do all the things that everyone do, right? You get into rage, you get into bad attitude, but if it really gets up there, I start to lose it. Like everything's funny and it's not funny, right? So I actually have to keep that in check. But really the biggest thing is whatever's happening, right? Whatever's happening that's stressful or depressing or, grim, there's, how to keep the joy in that. How do you do that? Well, because you know what? It's not permanent, is it? Right? It's not permanent. And the alternative is to just go down the rabbit hole. I feel lucky. I say to my book, I feel like I was born a happy kid, right? I just was. My father, I think I got that from my father, oddly enough. Mm-hmm. He had this nickname, Smiley. And let me tell you something, my father's childhood, we could do a show here. I'd have you weeping. He had a horrible, really horrible, he had nothing to smile about. I did, right? I had these amazing older sisters, amazing cousins. When I was growing up, I had this amazing mentor who I'm still in touch with today. I was a cheerleader because my cousin was a cheerleader. And so I had a lot of positive influences around me. It was when I went through my divorce that I thought, oh, wow, this is what life is about. These are the moments, and how do you hold on to that joy? I had my sister shake me. Do not let him steal your joy. Mm. And I was like, oh, okay. So guess what? It just is like this. Life is really short. And there's always someone out there. There's always someone out there who's got it worse than you. Always. Now, that's not anything to laugh about, but it's to say, choose the joy.
Look for the joy. Choose the joy. Keep the positive. And I think it is a defense mechanism, a survival mechanism to laugh in the midst of crisis. So I always think it's okay. I'd rather have you laughing and finding something. I have friends from years ago that would say, if my kid falls down and is bleeding, I just laugh. I know it's not normal. How I release, like somehow seems funny to me. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. I think now I pay more attention to people's laughter for a lot of reasons. And I notice when people are nervous, they'll laugh sometimes. When people are excited, they'll laugh. When they're stressed. But I think it's a release. I think even if you think it's appropriate or not appropriate, it doesn't really matter. It's like a release. Like it's still expressing a part of yourself. And ideally, there is humor in most things, the terrible things, the wonderful things. And I try to be like, okay, there's something funny in that. And most of the time I'm the butt at the joke because I do the dorkiest things. And I'm like, like I remember once sitting around with a bunch of women at a Bible study. And these women are talking about being teased in junior high and high school and what it felt like. And I'm silent, which is rare for me to be silent. And I'm totally silent. And they're like, why are you so quiet? And I'm like, I've never been teased. Like, I've never been bullied. And they all start laughing. And I'm like, what's so funny? Like, we constantly tease you and harass you. You're just oblivious. And I'm like, I am oblivious. I think everybody likes me. I think the world has me. So if I bother someone, you have to tell me directly because I am like, they love me. They think I'm great. And then later people are like, no, they actually don't like you. I'm like, they don't like me? Why do they not like me? So I think I have this naivety, which I don't know why I have it. I have no reason to really have it, but of this laughter and of thinking positive and in like your family saying your dad was Smiley. Sometimes those of us that have had the hardest times growing up, we find the smile sometimes as a self mechanism to protect. And sometimes because we know how horrible it can be at home. So being out, like what other people get upset about, you think, oh my gosh, that's nothing. Like I'm good, but I'm good. So it takes a lot for those of us that are Smiley to sometimes be able to say, oh, that's hard. That's hard. Dang, I'm not that happy. So I love that you have laughter. So Connie, what I want to know is like, is there 3 lessons that you've learned, and it can be from the beginning of time till today, that as you speak to our listeners, and if you guys have questions or comments, feel free to leave them. We'll make sure to answer them. But is there 3 tips that you could just encourage people, 3 lessons that you've learned that you either wish you knew then, or that you've learned along the way through this journey of life to this moment, which we don't know how many more moments we get. So
You're absolutely right about that. Yeah. No, absolutely. My whole book is 12 chapters long, and there are 12 life lessons. So I'll give you 3 of my favorites.
give us 3 of your favorites. Yeah.
My biggest one is to give back.
Mm.
And I love, love, love the example I gave in the book. I won't go into that because I don't think we have time, but giving back is, the concept of it was like, oh, look, I grew up Catholic, right? Like we're always tithing and we're always giving and all this stuff. So that's great. But really, when I got the concept of giving back, whoa, you get more from giving back than you ever expect.
Yeah.
In the middle of this divorce I was going through, I volunteered my time with cheerleaders because my cheer coach, who, by the way, is amazing. She's got this amazing business today. It was nothing back in the 70s, right? Cheerleading was not even an industry back then. But I was like, wow, if I can give 1 minute back to one little girl of what she gave me, I'll feel fulfilled. So now I'm all excited, right? I'm coaching these kids. Boom. They're giving me. I didn't expect that. Okay, so give back is one huge, huge lesson.
Give back.
The other lesson, which I love, is live with compassion, right?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Both of these, by the way, really require you to like be in someone else's shoes, right? Every single one of us are walking around with stuff. Every one of us. I mean, Stephen Covey gave a great example once. He was on a train or something, and these kids were like running rampant, and the dad is not paying attention. And he's like, "Don't you want to get your kids under control?" And he's like, "So sorry about that. We just got back from the hospital and my wife is dying." Like, be compassionate, right? Like, what else is going on, right? You don't know what's going on in other people's lives. I used to work for an innocence project, and the stories in there were very humbling, right? So live with compassion, right? You don't know why someone is where they are. You don't know why they're doing what they're doing. There could be a reason for that, right? There usually is, right? Okay. So give back, live with compassion. And here's a really, really big one. And recently I did this series of video, what do you call them now? MP3s with this wonderful woman. And so there's 2 or 3 sessions that she spends on talking about forgiveness. Be forgiving, right? Mm-hmm. So give back, live with compassion, and be forgiving. When we are not forgiving toward other people, it does not mean that whatever harm they did to you or whatever the situation is okay. We're not saying it's okay. Yeah. That's not what forgiveness is. Yeah. A lot of people, I think, don't forgive because that's what they think forgiveness is. Oh, well, if I forgive that person, that means I'm saying it's okay. No. When we hold on to stuff, it's like a cancer. It eats away at us. And, I really, I described this moment in my book where I really realized that I had forgiven my ex because he tapped me on the shoulder out of the blue in New York City one day. I'm like, oh, hey, how's it going? Listen, if I had not forgiven him, I'm the one who ends. It's just like when you give back, you reap the rewards. When you forgive, it's really for you. And it's for you. I'm not trying to tell you be selfish. I'm trying to say you will never move on with your life if you don't do that. Yeah. If you don't do that. And I think those 3 examples, give back, live with compassion, and be forgiving, they're like almost intertwined, right? Mm-hmm. Once we forgive, if we start living with compassion, we almost automatically want to give back, right? Yeah. People were so kind to me when my father abandoned the family. Like I look back as an adult, I'm like, that is just amazing. Like why wouldn't I want to give back? Like, and all of these things, these three things, whether we realize it or not, right away, down the road, they all support joy.
Mm-hmm.
They all support joy. If you are always giving back, you're always living with compassion, and you're always being forgiving, your life has no choice but to move in the direction of joy.
Yeah, I love that. I love, Connie, about your three. I wrote a book that was 7 steps, and I changed it because I didn't want to invite people to do more. I wanted to invite people to be more. And so I love that all 3 of yours are about being. People don't need more to do on their to-do list. They need new ways of being with themselves and with others. And I think when you be compassionate toward yourself and toward others, it makes you want to forgive because you live in that curiosity. I love the book, The Shack, and the movie, The Shack, and about, if we sit in the judgment seat, which is human nature, to judge and to decide this person did this because they're this and they're that. But if we instead sit in the compassion seat, the seat of curiosity and wonder and questions, I wonder what happened to them that made them do X, Y, and Z, your ex-husband, your father, my people that have hurt me. When you sit in that curiosity, it leaves you open and compassion to be able to forgive. Oh my gosh, if they hurt me, they must have been way more hurt. What they projected on me must be even more inflicted onto themselves, or had been inflicted into them on their childhood. And when I think about, I did videos on it and then was invited to write a book, is that a lot of people talk about gratitude. And I say, to be grateful is a good way to live, but to be generous is a great way to live. It is why we are created, is to be generous. And I'm like, when I figured that out, it was a huge thing for me. Like, I am created to take care of myself so that I can care for others. And about a month or so ago, I had a woman on my show, Jennifer Johnson, and I love the word hope. I'm like, hope is what keeps me going, what keeps me alive. And she said, do you know the acronym for it? And I said, no. And she said, help one person every day.
Love that.
I love that, Jennifer. I said, I try to help one person every day, whether it's smiling at them or encouraging them or getting to know them or inviting them in to whatever work I'm doing. But I think that when we start living beyond ourselves, when it's not like, there's nothing wrong with gratitude, but I meet people like, I have a job, I have a nice house, I have a great, and I'm like, okay, you weren't created just to be about you, because the joy is in when you get yourself healthy and stable enough to be able to give time, to give a listening ear, to give an encouraging word. I mean, listening to you, and you sound like you're very blessed to have just an amazing community around you growing up, that one whisper of a mentor, of a cheerleading coach. And when I talk to people about who mentored them, I'm always like, that's awesome that grandma taught you how to bake apple pie. Now, what are you doing? Because not everybody gets a grandma that teaches them. How are you paying that gift forward into cheerleading, into loving, into baking? And so what I was thinking about, Connie, is 2 more things for you. One, I want to know, is there something, as you look back at your younger self, that you wish you would have known now, that you could have told her that you didn't know, and now you're like, oh my gosh, like, what would you say to your younger self?
It's something we touched upon earlier. I definitely 100% absolutely would tell my younger self that this life is not about the destination. Mm-hmm. You know, as a kid, you know, and listen, when dear old dad left, you know, things were pretty hard, you know? So I'm always looking at the kids with the Nike sneakers, and I'm always looking at this, and well, if I could just have that, if I could just do this, if I could just do, you know, and it followed my life, right? I'm like, all right, so I'm going to university. All right, when I get that degree, I'm gonna be making some money. And it was like, it took me a really long time to realize that it wasn't, those were, I mean, when I think about the connections I made and the things I did to get to where I am now, I'm like, whoa, I was missing out on the journey. You know, there'd be steps, right? Like, I did get the degree and I'm like, wow, I could do big things. I can do hard things. I'm like, pat myself on the back. I had to foot that bill, you know, I had to have the 8 student loans, whatever. But you know what? there's something larger than us, right? And again, right, I was brought up with, my mom's not only devout Catholic, but she's very spiritual, right? The two don't always go hand in hand.
Right.
She's very spiritual. She taught me a lot about looking in and, being a good person. Even up until the time I got married to my ex-husband, I was like, oh, well, when I get married, then what? Right? Marriage, of all things, is not a destination, right? So if we can remember that, like, it's about the journey. It really is about the journey. And that's what I would tell my younger self. Don't be focused so much on the destination, girl. You need to focus on what's happening in this journey right now. Because guess what? Our journey can be interrupted, right?
All the time, right? Interrupted, disrupted, totally turn in a different turn. Even when we think, oh, this is what I want. Just kidding. And I also think it is that's such a great lesson, Connie, is that arrival. Like, I'll be happy when. I'll celebrate when. If I could just get one more thing. But when I achieve this, and then you think, okay, I think very much, you mentioned fertility. I think that is so common. And I did not know how many people struggle with that and how much stress it put on a relationship, right? And so if I could just have a baby, if I could just get married, if I could just get that job, if I could just, and yet every single one of them come with blessings and challenges, right? And unknown. And so, yes, the journey, I think that's important. And even right now with the holidays, I think I was talking to someone this weekend and they were saying, I just need to get the gifts wrapped and I just need to do this. And I was thinking, I'm not doing that this year. I have not been doing that for a number of years now. It's about like being with the people I love and baking cookies together or making a meal or playing cards or laughing. It's not always about we've been trying to do more experiences than gifts, because it's like, make the memories. Nobody needs more stuff. We all have a lot of stuff, and most people buy what they want when they want it anyway. And so just being with people and loving on them and slowing down and having conversations and laughing, right? And just being close. I love that part of the holidays. So Connie, I know people are going to love what you've had to say and what you do. And so I'm curious, what's the best way to get a hold of you if someone wants to connect with you?
Sure. So I've got, all the bells and whistles. I have a website. I'm on LinkedIn. But where I'm really, really, really present these days is Facebook. So I'm found on Facebook as Connie J. Monroe. From there, I do have a group. You can check me out. I've got a group of women that I'm working with right now. I'm up to almost 120 women. But yeah, my big presence at the moment is Facebook. And so Connie, I think I'm on there as Connie Jean Monroe. So that's where you would find me.
I love that you have a community of women you're serving. I'm excited to start this group that I'm starting in January. And they were like, what are we going to do after the 90 days? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm thinking about a retreat, but please don't hold me to that. I got to one step at a time. But one thing I know, Connie, is people need connection and community. They really need connection and community. So I love that you have created this community for 120 women to be together. And I just think we really need to support one another and to make people not feel alone wherever they live, wherever they work, whatever they're going through. We all have something and we need community. We need to support one another. So before we say goodbye to you, to Connie, do you have one success story of someone you've worked with or something you've seen that you've been able to support someone on their journey? I always say we don't shame people and we don't save people. We support them, and that's what accountability is. It's about support, not shaming or saving. We don't do the work for you, but as coaches, we encourage you on your journey, and we support you. So do you have a success story you could share with us before we say goodbye to you today?
Sure. I'm going to just share a success story that got me into the coaching business, right? Okay. So I was working for the big company less than 10 years. And I've been promoted to this. Actually, I don't even think I was a manager yet. I think I was a supervisor, right? But I had this group of 15 people. Okay. And, I wasn't going to stay in corporate, but then the company was so good to us, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, what I came to realize is that these 15 people, they were all hardworking, but my big thing is I really wanted to get to know them. I didn't want to just get to know what they did. And so now I created a weekly team meeting and monthly one-on-ones with them. So here's the deal, right? So there's 15 people. I would say at least 5 or 6 of them didn't want to be there.
Okay.
I'm like, whoa, this is jarring. So they were all there to get in the company to do something else. And they've been sitting in their desk for 4 or 5 years, right? Woo! I said, we got to change this, right? So here's the thing. This is what made me realize that I wanted to work with people and help them, because it was, for me, it was magical. So there's this one kid, I don't know, he probably wasn't even 25 years old at the time. I'm like, well, why are you still here? Like, haven't you interviewed? Like, he's like, no, time gets away from me. I'm like, listen to me. We need to put you on a career path. So he's like, and listen, I don't even know him anymore. Like, I don't keep in touch with him. Like, but this is amazing, right? So now here he is. Now, fortunately, I knew a couple people in human resources, but I was asking around for him, because this kid's dream was to work on Wall Street, to be on the trading floor. He's in some office in New Jersey pushing papers all day. So I'm like, all right, well, let's see what we can do, right? So I'm making inquiries, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm sitting there thinking behind my desk, like, I probably shouldn't be spending this much time on this, but that's okay. So now, anyway, I got him a hookup to get an interview. That's it. That's all I did. I go, the rest is up to you. So he got the job, right? His first day on the job, he calls me. He calls my line in my little cubicle. He calls the thing. I'm like, hey, how's it going? He's like, listen to this. He holds the phone out and I can hear it. I can hear the trading. I can hear the lunatics screaming across the room. He goes, I'm here because of you. I'm like, no, I got you the interview. That's it. You did the rest of it. Go enjoy your life. That was, to me, magic. And I really feel like at that moment, I was like, this is what I got to do, right?
Yes.
I got to help people in this manner, because I don't know why, like, maybe that wouldn't speak to someone else. That spoke to me, and that filled me with joy. It really did. And I just, that's my big success one. I always start with that. And that was so many years ago now. It was like a lifetime ago, but I love that story.
I love it too. And just being able, I'm like, the best part of coaching is watching people that you get to know soar. It's not about what you get. It's about like, yes, they did the thing. And then they get to whatever it is they want, to start their own business, to do all the things in life that are possible when we do the work. So, well, thank you so much for being with me, Connie. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season.
Thank you too. I really appreciate you having me. This has been great. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And thanks to our listeners for being here. Thank you for saying hello. Remember, if there's questions, comments, or thoughts, leave them in the comments, and Connie or I or both will get back to you. Thanks for being with us on H3 TV, and have a great week.